Hi, this is Dan Sullivan. I'd like to welcome you to the Multiplier Mindset Podcast. Probably the most significant difference that I've seen in really successful entrepreneurs over the past 40 years in comparison with the general population is how entrepreneurs look at their experience in two ways. The first one, they see themselves winning. That's when what they expected to happen actually happens, or they actually exceed their expectations, and that's called winning. And the second aspect is when their expectations don't happen. As a matter of fact, they get a negative situation. But instead of seeing the setback or the failure as negative, they actually see it as learning. So this sets up a very, very interesting way to deal with all of your experience in life, and that is that it's either happening the way you wanted it to happen or better, which is winning, or it didn't happen the way you wanted to. You didn't get the result that you wanted to have, and that's called learning. What this means is it takes all the negativity, it takes all the sense of failure out of your entrepreneurial experience. Just think about training your mind in such a way that only one of two things can happen in any situation. You're going to win, which is really great, or you're going to learn, which in many cases can be even better. Frequently, I've seen entrepreneurs take their biggest jumps after what most other people would consider a failure. I think the reason for that is that when you fail, your nervous system is just flooded with momentary negative emotion, okay, and it's very powerful. I know myself when something happens which is a negative surprise. In other words, it's almost like you're getting blindsided for a period of minutes, and it doesn't usually last too much more than a half hour. You're just really angry, you're upset, you have this feeling of being badly dealt with by the world or by circumstances. And what I say is that if you can be conscious, you can actually think about how you're thinking during those minutes that happen after a failure. You have access to some incredible energy, emotional energy, to actually make some very significant breakthroughs. The way we do it in Strategic Coach takes the form of what we call the experience transformer. And the experience transformer, you immediately say, well, what happened that really worked out of the situation? And this is really hard for people to do when they've just had a setback. Well, nothing worked. And I said, well, of course, a lot of things worked. What really worked? First of all, you were in the situation to fail. And most people don't really have the courage to do that. They don't really have the commitment to actually get into a situation. And the other thing is that in the moment where you failed, your mind immediately said, oh, you should have done this. Next time we have to do this. And that's where the learning is. So what happens is that, first of all, you're able to see that this situation that you just got into actually followed a long series of tremendous progress that you had been in. And that's what worked. The deeper you look at the failed situation, you begin to see there were a lot of things that actually worked. There were just some crucial things that didn't, and it was the crucial things that didn't work that actually represents the setback. So what you can do in this situation then is you can say, okay, this worked, this worked, this worked, this worked. Now what didn't work? Well, what could I do next time? Well, I could do this. For example, I could do better planning. I could get the team together and we could think it through beforehand. Maybe there's a checklist that we need to do next time so that we don't repeat this experience. And pretty soon you come up with 4 or 5 strategies that represent fundamental learning. And now you can't do this situation over again, so there's no possibility of going back and reversing what actually happened. But because now you have access to a tremendous amount of new insight and new wisdom about this situation, then in a similar situation in the future, you're now going to approach it from a much higher level of alertness. You're going to do much better preparation. Your teamwork in the situation is going to be much better. And as a result then, let's say half a year down the road or a year down the road, when you look back at what seemed in the moment to be a failure, you'll see that it was actually the trigger, the learning trigger, which actually allowed you to make a huge jump in both your performance and results. So really successful entrepreneurs, as opposed to okay entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are just getting along, do something very, very special with their setbacks. One is they never repeat them. And the reason they never repeat them is because they get massive new learning, which jumps them to a whole new level of entrepreneurial performance and achievement. So this is probably what makes entrepreneurs entrepreneurs, is what they do with what the vast majority of people would consider to be failure. They either have an attitude that they're going to win in any situation, and if they don't win, then they're going to learn.